All right, Molo Sanbonani, hello, how's it? Good evening, good evening, good evening. Welcome to this another episode of Liberty and Friends here on the Big Daddy Liberty Show. My name is Usihle Ngobese, aka Big Daddy Liberty. I'm not going to waffle too much. Why is that? A word of warning. This is South Africa. I'm about to have the lights cut off in the next 2 or 3 minutes or so. The show will continue. I've got some emergency lights waiting for that eventuality. So just forgive me if there is any sort of cut in the next minute or so. But we endeavor to keep the show rolling. Speaking about rolling on, it is a full house tonight. The entire Friends panel is joining us this evening. So we'll get to them in a second. In fact, delaying getting to them is because I want to remind you to hit that like button. Yebo, reminder to you, whether you're watching this simulcast on Facebook, YouTube, or on Twitter, to smash that like button. Do it now. Help me grow my audience. It does something to the algorithm. You always hear other social media and show hosts say that it helps the algorithm. Well, smash that like button, please. And of course, remember, if you are watching on YouTube, do me a solid favor, subscribe to the channel. Help me reach my goal of 50,000 subscribers by the end of the year. A firm reminder, guys, we have a website. Find us, please, at BigDaddyLiberty.com. There, of course, you can also pledge some financial support to the show. Remember, all of this costs cash, and it's you guys who support the show who are instrumental in getting this content, out. Now, enough with that jibber jabber, enough with the waffling. How about we get straight into tonight's show and bring on the Friends panel? Remember, Liberty and Friends is the one long format show that I have. And what it is a revolving door of panelists. They run the gauntlet of liberals, classical liberals, conservatives, you name it, anarchists even, the sort of voices who you don't actually hear on mainstream TV. I bring them here to provide compelling analysis you'll get nowhere else. Now, with that being said, enough with the jibber jabber. Let me bring on my first guest, who himself looks like has been struck by ESCOM darkness. Dumo, good evening.
Hey, Sihle, how are you? I'm doing very well today. I hope you guys can hear me. The lights just came back on right now, and you see I'm adjusting my lights. And yeah, man, it's been 1 month of supreme victory, so I'm happy about that. And yeah, I'm looking forward to having a good discussion.
Hey, man, dude, good to have you on the show. That is, of course, the host of the Manpatria show. Make sure you find them, please, on their social media, including on YouTube. Dumo, you still there?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Here.
And of course, on their website at manpatria.com. With that being said, let me bring on another leg of that three-legged boyki pot that I like to refer the Manpatria show to be. Koketso, rather, Resane. He's coming to us all the way from Kenya. Koketso, Baba, good evening.
Yeah, I'm going to use my radio voice for this. So good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of Liberty and Friends, coming at you all the way live from the Mountain Kingdom, capital city of Nairobi. Good to be with you, ladies and gentlemen.
Wow, share radio voice. I like it. I like it. And that is, of course, Koketso Resane of the Manpatria show. Shout out to him. Here's a face who really, in fact, the next two faces, you haven't seen these two chaps for a while on the show, but they're very welcome. Of course, Mpiyakhe Dhlamini is the first of those faces, a writer, contributor, analyst. Mpiyakhe, Baba, good evening.
Hi, how's it, Sihle, and everyone on the panel, as well as your viewers and listeners. Yeah, it's good to be back. It's good to be back.
Bafo, good to have you back on the show. And last, of course, but not least, another face who you haven't seen in a while. In fact, the last time he was probably on the show is when I was doing my tongue-in-cheek Blacks Only show. If you guys remember that content, it's still on the channel. But nonetheless, there he is, Jimmy Ramakgopa. Jimmy, Baba, good evening.
Hey, good evening, everyone. Great to see you guys, and thank you for inviting me to your show.
Good to have you on, Bafo. And indeed, let's get straight into it, because I think tonight's show as we always do on Liberty and Friends, we're going to look at the news week that was. What are the stories that got us captivated, angry, sad, happy, whatever the case may be, the things that matter to the viewers on the show. Speaking about the viewers, you, dear viewer, are very much a part of the show. Remember, all you need to do is get your comments in, whether you're watching on Facebook, YouTube, or on Twitter. Just type a comment in and we'll put them up on screen. You're very much a part of the show. This is Liberty and Friends. All right, fellas, I'm going to move us to our first story. And for whatever reason, I've been lucky. The lights are still on, touch wood. But it's been a very interesting week insofar as if you are a Joburg resident, the very soil beneath your feet seems to be giving way in one form or another, whether it's the various tremors that were reported over this last weekend on the West Rand in particular. And of course, the major issue that saw play itself out is that gas explosion or alleged gas explosion, which literally raised the soil through taxis into the air, and of course, frightened residents. I'm not going to play the video, only because for whatever reason, YouTube wants to demonetize that. But I will read from this quick article by EEWN, which obviously, as the damage is now being assessed by authorities and, Upanyaza Lusufi, Panyazaring, acting busy on the situation. The truth of the matter is it's left a bit of damage on that particular Bree Street or Liliengoy Street, 400 meters worth of tarmac thrown up and soil caved in. And more importantly, residents left without electricity and basic services. Now, let me bring that image on the screen, as I said. Hopefully this works. Oh, how's that? That was smooth for a change. I didn't have to buy time and tell people to hit the like button. There it is. Joburg residents left frustrated by power outage following the gas explosion. You see that very poignant image there of people walking in the dark. And no, it isn't ESCOM related in this instance. Some parts of downtown Joburg were plunged into darkness on Wednesday after a suspected gas leak on Bree Street that left, sadly, one person dead, injuring at least 45 others. The city has said that it will restore power, on Monday, end of quote. Guys, let me throw it to you here. I knew I'd make that mistake. Back. Dumo, I think there's two things that really interested me about the story. Number one, we can't escape the conversation around infrastructure decay generally in this country. Now, that isn't proven to be the case here, but it is a factor that one has to discuss when discussing these sort of incidents.
Yeah, I think Joburg has been having a trend of infrastructure decay for quite a while. And then now that this explosion has happened or has occurred, I think people are going to be asking, well, how quick can the city of Joburg respond to this? Because, they have a mayor there who doesn't seem to know what's going on. Or let me not say he doesn't seem to know. He appears not to know. He appears to as if he doesn't know. Maybe he does know, but he's just acting dumb so that he can fool us. That there are people like that. But yeah, he doesn't give me much confidence. But I think I think honestly, Joburg as a whole, there's a lot left wanting. Again, the potholes or something else. There were I remember just driving to Randburg the other day, and yeah, man, my tires have suffered quite a bit, and I had to pay a lot of money to fix my tires. And then, fortunately enough, I drove back there again, and I found that they fixed the pothole. But that pothole I hit was there for like months before they fixed it. So this is a very, very sad situation. So obviously, as a libertarian, you would just say, get everything privatized, because if something happens on that road, if there's a pothole or something, it'll get fixed immediately. And also, if you want people to use those roads, you want them to be safe. So, and if it's privately owned and something like that happens, you can very easily point your fingers at the owner, and then the owner has to fix it up. But now, with regards to this explosion that happened in Bree Street, yes, the fingers are being pointed at the municipality, but there's an issue. Who's going to be held responsible? What are they going to do? Only time will tell.
I would fully agree with that. And I want to take it one step further as I throw it to you, Koketso. Dumo touched on it. The response by the people who, in the course of this incident having happened on Wednesday, then sort of giving the public feedback on this issue, the likes of Panyaza Lesufi, the EFF representative in the Joburg Council, because remember, it is an ANC, EFF, and PA alliance, the mayor himself, who, for the lack of me, I can't remember his name right now, but who's been under a lot of criticism himself for being hapless as a character, doesn't leave much, it doesn't inspire much confidence insofar as the response.
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, I'll raise this issue here in that I don't believe that the leadership, the current leadership in the city of Johannesburg, actually understand what it is they are presiding over. This is really the gem of Southern Africa. It is the city which is responsible for much of Africa's GDP. So again, not just the country, but the entire continent. But I don't think they really take it seriously, the positions that they find themselves in. You see this in the lack of response. You see this in how blasé and how quick they are to actually go out there and pull out statements regarding the incident that has just happened. No sense of professionalism, no sense of, gathering the facts before you decide to call all of the media to come show face, etc. They really don't treat Johannesburg like the gem that it is. And this is going to be reflected in the time it takes to repair, the manner in which repairs will be done, and of course, how we got here in the first place, the way situations like these are actually allowed to take place in the first place. That is a lack of infrastructure, a lack of policing, and a lack of prevention of illicit activity, which some believe may have led to some of the events that we've seen in the past week. So there's that.
And that's the part for me, which I think was quite interesting. It's the response by the public to what is effectively the expectation that the state will respond. That is the Joburg state, the local government. What am I saying? The local government administration. Pardon me. The almost instant lack of faith, if you looked at the comments on social media by the individuals who are tasked with responding from this, where it seemed as if really it was political voices responding with the usual gobbledygook and not actual experts. Let me make the point clear, and Jimmy, I'll throw it to you. There was a marked difference in how, for example, Igoli Gas, which is an entity that provides gas in the Joburg area and surrounds, communicated versus the city of Joburg. Let me be precise and specific. The statement from Igoli Gas from the get-go was factual and almost science-driven, if I can use that expression just loosely, in the sense that they communicated, said, guys, this incident has just happened. We know there will be an investigation. However, our preliminary investigation is that our gas system is intact, and we see no drop in pressure, They explain themselves. Instantly, if you're someone who was thinking this could be an Igoli Gas situation, you understood that perhaps based on their statement, that isn't the case. Joburg City, their response was to delay, firstly, to communicate to the media, and then pack that area with politicians to hold a press conference at the site of the actual incident, not knowing whether it was still volatile or could there be a secondary explosion, or not even knowing that there was someone dead at the time. So they hadn't even combed the scene properly, because there actually was one fatality, but at the time it was reported there were no fatalities. So I asked myself the question, Jimmy, why would you come out, Ubegama politicians, to communicate on this issue when you actually haven't combed the area yet to establish, firstly, danger, and secondly, whether there's still people maybe trapped and needing assistance? It didn't make sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think one thing that we also need to remind ourselves of is the lack of professional conduct. I'm not going to say professionals, because I think there are a lot of professionals in the public sector. Perhaps they're not being used quite well enough, or they're not using themselves well enough. I don't know if you guys remember some time ago, the N3 bridge collapse. We had a bridge collapse here in Joburg. And then after during the time of the bridge collapse, a part of the entry closer to, I don't know if you know where Standard Bank is, was actually about to collapse. And then I think if it wasn't for, I think it was Herman Mashaba's time that time, if it wasn't for like his government, they wouldn't have fixed that bridge. They wouldn't have gone there and assessed. So basically that bridge would have also collapsed. So what we are seeing here also is sort of like a repeat of what's been happening. We're starting to see a trend of infrastructure failing, partly because of lack of, how can I put it, accountability, but also a lack of basically people doing their jobs. I mean, like, I'm sure the city has a lot of engineers, a lot of professionals who get paid to sort of like do these inspections and to check. And even if the gas pipe, even if it's not a Golis gas pipe, it's probably a gas pipe from back in the day, which has been decommissioned and probably not been checked or not decommissioned properly. Hence, there's probably some gas left in there. And there's probably some other activities happening under the city of Johannesburg. Because yes, even right now, there isn't necessarily like an active mine under the CBD, but there are tunnels down there. And heaven knows what happens in those tunnels. So that could be a possible cause. And also tunnels that are used to service these pipes, right? And you might find that people, as we know, that we have a lot of people doing all sorts of things in terms of mining activity going on down there. So there are a lot of possibilities and possible reasons as to why that thing exploded. However, the issue here is that no one was inspecting these gas pipes, volatile gas pipes, until the day that they actually exploded, which means that someone was not doing their job. Going back to also, no one is inspecting the bridges. Therefore, if no one inspects them, soon or later they will start collapsing. So I think it just goes back to people people just need to do their jobs. And if people just do their jobs, like the basic thing like that, I think a lot of these can be avoided.
No, I would agree with that. And for me, I must be frank here. Mpiyakhe, I must throw this to you because it touches to something which I think we've touched on, but I want to add a little flavor here tonight. The trauma of an incident like that. I think the last time we'd ever seen something like that happen within the inner city, especially in Johannesburg, was, sort of in the early 90s, in the run-up to democracy, where, the ANC was planting bombs, and also the extremists, Afrikaner extremists were planting bombs all over in the run-up to the election. That sort of terrorism. And again, I'm not suggesting this was terrorism, but I'm suggesting that the trauma of an incident like that will linger with you if you're a resident of that part of the world. It looked like something out of, what was that movie, Avengers, where Tony Stark fights the Hulk in Joburg CBD. Hey, guys, it was scary. It was scary stuff. Yeah. You see people running around as taxis are being thrown all over.
Yeah. No, it was scary. And, I think Jimmy raised a couple of great points there, especially his points about someone, you might find that, it's not that people weren't doing their jobs. People were probably doing their jobs, but they are just logging issues. They come there, they do inspections, and it's okay. No, there are issues here. They keep reporting them, but no one in charge is allocating money in a budget to fix those issues, which is something I personally have experience of, having worked in a state-owned enterprise, because you log issues and then you notice issues in a plant or whatever it is, and then you come back, no one does anything. So that it happens all the time in South Africa, unfortunately. So, but I don't know, like, issues like that. Infrastructure is not sexy. Infrastructure issues like, things that are going in the background, things like bulk sewage and electricity and so on, and like, whatever infrastructure it may be, like it's not something sexy. Like doing routine maintenance is not sexy as well. So it's just something that, I don't know how you make voters care, because that's the root cause of everything. That's how you get to the root cause of this. Yeah, that's how you get to the root cause of this, is making voters care. So yeah, I don't know how you make voters care about this stuff. How you make it concrete to them, because today something like this might happen, but then what other issues are waiting in the pipeline for us? Because it's almost scary to imagine, because what Jimmy said about the entry bridge collapse and this becoming a regular occurrence, you worry about stuff like that. So you just, what can I say, love and light to the people of Johannesburg. Let's hope that things start to change, because there's very little we can do on our side. But yeah, let's hope things start to change. And unfortunately, it starts with government. It starts with voting for the right people. And like like Jimmy said, the last time we had a proper response was when Herman Mashaba was in charge. So right now we don't have a Herman Mashaba. We have someone else in charge. So let's just hope things start to get better for Johannesburg. That's all.
Yeah, so maybe I'll jump in here. I just want to respond to Rob Peters's comment there that, he says the panel seems to be pussyfooting around the issue. So maybe I'll be a little bit more frank on behalf of the panel. You've got Joburg Mayor Kabelo Mwanda, I believe his name is, who looks like a deer in the headlights, just like the guy before him. I forget his name now. It now looks like Al Jamaa can't field a decent candidate in public office. There may be good people in the party, but in terms of who they sent for public office, that's another story entirely. You've got Panyaza Lissufi, who's pretty much going by that old mantra of never let a crisis go to waste. He's making sure he's front and center of anything and everything. Nothing will stop this man from calling a press conference and his voice being the voice of somewhat reason amongst this crisis. And then, of course, you've got a city that can't seem to actually get infrastructure right. I'm still having memories of a bus that burnt on the N1 between the Rivonia and William Nicol off-ramp. I drive there quite often, and I drive over the remnants of burnt tar. This is something that happened, if I'm not mistaken, back in November or December of 2019. The damage is still there, and I'm sure there's many other instances of this. So yeah, that's it. I'm going to say it outright and say that the officials in charge are really not taking this seriously. We don't expect much from them. And the city as a whole, current and previous administrations, just can't seem to do the right thing when it comes to infrastructure repairs.
I must agree with this. And Dumo, I can see you're going to come in, and I'll let you come in a second. Because I want to say this. Guys, it's not just Joburg. Infrastructure collapse is a national problem in cities across the country. And what makes it worse, and I'll say the uncomfortable bit, the bit that gets people cancelled, it should be a massive indictment that the supposed pro-black government of the ANC, the supposed government that loves the people, it sacrificed, went through the struggle for the people, now has power, now has been in government for 28 years, but cannot provide or even maintain infrastructure that was built by people who supposedly hated blacks, the apartheid and colonialist regimes. How is it possible that the people who hated you the most were able to build the sort of infrastructure and maintain the sort of infrastructure for their people in their time that we can't do today with supposed politicians who love us? It doesn't make sense. Why are cities collapsing and crumbling by supposedly a government that loves the people? Guys, I'm sorry, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, Sihle, you make a good point there. Another point that I'd like to make, when the Jagersfontein Dam collapsed, the owners of the dam, I don't know if they've been prosecuted yet, but the Water and Sanitation's minister of that time, David Mahlobo, said that they're going to lay criminal charges because they said they came there, they done investigations and they found irregularities and nothing was done. And then if you look at government, for example, there was the issue of the Vaal River, in the Emfuleni municipality. They both mean river. That's why I got confused. But anyway, the Vaal River was polluted by the municipality, right? And then this thing was taken to the Human Rights Commission, and then the Human Rights Commission gave recommendations to government on what to do. And then all the government just did, they just put the Emfuleni municipality under administration so that the provincial government can take over. So no responsibility can be allocated. And I think that's the problem when you have what you call public goods. So as a libertarian, I'll just give you the libertarian solution. Just privatize those things. Privatize the valleys, privatize the rivers, privatize the roads. Because when that thing collapses, you can always go to the owner and say, listen, you need to fix this thing. and you can hold that person liable. But now when this happens, that person who passed away, who's going to be held liable? Let's say it is the government's fault. No one's going to get arrested. No one's going to, have to pay stuff and things like that. That's the thing. So that's why I say, I think the libertarian solution is the better one here. Now, of course, people are going to say that, but we can vote for the right people and so forth. Okay, vote for the right people. Same thing happens again. Who's going to get prosecuted? Nobody. But if it's a private person, best believe there will be things happening. And then one more point. M1, I don't know if it was the N3 bridge or the M1. There was this makeshift bridge that was put on the M1, right? And that collapsed, M1. Right? That one, that one collapsed. I don't know if you're referring to that one, Jimmy. I'm not sure. But
no.
the engineers...
No. Continue.
Yeah, no, continue, Jim. Okay, I'll continue. I'll continue. But that people got the people that built that bridge, they were held responsible for that. But if the government does it, we're gonna hold another press conference. This is a tragedy. This is that. So I'm telling you, if it was privately owned, best believe that incident, the likelihood of that incident occurring would be very, very low. And when it does happen, people will be held responsible.
Yeah. No. Yeah, so the M1 one is the one by Sandton, where we have that nice bridge crossing to Alexandra. And then from the one I was referring to, though, I think it's in Germiston, somewhere around there. So that's a different one. I think 4 people died, if I'm not mistaken. But then also just to add on to what you said, Dumo, you and I have our own differences. So I'm not gonna take the libertarian stance on this. However, I will say that yes, there is merit to what you're saying in terms of that we need a system that sort of like ensures accountability one way or the other. How we do it is something that we probably need to think about. But then with that said, I think also the distinction between public sector and private sector is that private sector, they have something to lose, so be it profit, be it revenue, be it reputation, future business, and so on and so forth. So, for example, the M1 bridge collapse, the one that you made, a particular company needed to show action, needed to show proactive action in order to show that they are competent and then that they've learned from their mistakes and so that they can get future business. Whereas in the public sector, I mean, if they underperform, there's no incentive for performing. So if they underperform, they'll still collect your tax, whether you like it or not, next year. And they will still find a way to sort of like fill their buckets of gold. So I think that the thing is we need a system that sort of like ensures that a person who's put in a position of power or a responsibility has something to lose, and a system that actually enforces them, which isn't easy, I guess, under our current political structure, but I guess that's something that South Africans in general need to start thinking about, particularly when they start going out and voting and considering different parties that are out there.
Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate a point I made earlier about the people who get ignored in the public sector. In the public sector, it's the most frustrating job in the public sector is to be an engineer like Jimmy. To be an engineer because no one listens to you. I promise you, it's more. I believe there is more likely than not that there were engineers who spotted this issue well ahead of time and informed someone and told them whatever the issue is. Because the other commenter said that we are treading light. Well, this is what you do when you don't have facts. So we can't just go gung ho. We didn't assign blame. We don't know exactly who's at fault. We don't know exactly what happened. But I promise you, whatever it was, there was an engineer somewhere or engineers somewhere who were pointing this out and saying this is a problem. This is going to blow up on us. I remember that this was exactly the case at Eskom when the silo collapsed at Joburg Power Station. There were engineers who had noticed the issue long ahead of time and were warning about it. So it's always the case, and someone ignored those engineers. Now, the difference between the public and private sector, in the public sector, they can afford to ignore engineers because, it's all about the votes, it's all about how you spin things. But in the private sector, because everyone is automatically already hostile to the private sector, everyone sees them as just these greedy people who are in it for themselves. So, like, they always have to be at their best behavior because they like, where if some employee comes out and says, I'm being ignored here, I've been warning about this issue, this company wants to get you killed, everyone is going to jump on this company. And so you best believe they have all the incentive to fix the issue, and they lose customers and all of that. But I mean, is Joburg going to lose customers? Are ratepayers going to be able to withhold their rates to the city of Johannesburg and say, we won't be paying because you failed to fix this issue? No, they can't. So you better hope the person who is at fault here is the private company and not the city, because we can actually hold the private company accountable. If it's the city, good luck.
I must come in here, and I'm going to move us on in a moment, guys, because we are short on time. There's a point to Koketso and Mpiyakhe have touched on in particular that I want to just tease out. Remember I said to you, on the Joburg city side and Gauteng government and blah, 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 instead of hearing from actual experts, engineers, gas leak people, blah, 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 you name it, we were hearing from politicians. For me, that was a microcosm of a larger problem that happens in the public sector, and Mpiyakhe touched on it now. Beyond the fact that they don't listen to these people, and beyond the fact that, as Mpiyakhe said, that infrastructure maintenance is not a sexy issue, is a bigger problem here. Actual professionals, actual experts also now find themselves having to actually just keep quiet within the state infrastructure or mechanism, pardon me, because they might say something which is politically uncomfortable. For instance, how do we know, I'm just creating a hypothetical, that some engineer didn't say, hey guys, we need to devote, of the 100 million rand budget, we need to devote 80 million rand to just maintenance. No new roads, no new pipes, no new anything, which is politically sexy because you can cut ribbons for that. Just pure maintenance, and then we can devote other things for another financial year. How do we know a situation like that is not happening? Because some politicians say, I want to build more this, for the sake of cutting ribbons, and it's an election year next year. Are we not seeing something like this brew? Just quick comments on this before I move us on.
Okay, I'll comment quickly. The thing about politicians, right? They're not in the business of service delivery. They're in the business of making promises. And that's why you find politicians, the ones at the top, they all behave similarly. So that's the reality. They're in it for themselves. They want to make themselves look good. And as Mpiyakhe said, they'll always try to spin it. So even if, and as you mentioned now, Sihle, that conversation about, hey, we need to do this and that, I'm pretty sure that happened. But because some guy wants to look good and he wants to see, he wants his face on billboards, vote for this guy, vote for this party, that's the reason why we're having this problem. So and it goes back to what I said. Privatize everything, because that way the guy who owns it is going to get into trouble if those things happen. It's so easy, guys. It's the simplest solution, right? And you don't have to vote for no one. Like when the road collapses, you're like, who owns this road? I mean, it's the same thing like in a neighborhood, right? If your dog bites someone, they're going to say, whose dog bit that guy? They're going to come to you, right? And say, hey, your dog bit my son or daughter, right? It's simple. But if it's a stray dog, they'll just be like, they'll find it, probably put it down. You know what I mean? But that's what I'm saying. If there's an owner, you can always attach a person to it. So please, let's privatize it, guys.
I think we need a separate discussion about this private.
Yeah, we do. So for the record, I don't believe in privatizing everything. But yeah, just to add on to what Dumo is saying here, look, at the end of the day, even your most senior civil engineer within the city of Johannesburg, or within the Gauteng provincial government, or even within the state, in the public sector, even the most senior civil engineer would still be, several, maybe a couple of layers down from a politician. And ask us who have worked not necessarily in the public sector, but with the public sector. Imagine trying to be that guy who's got the expertise, who's got the solid advice to prevent disasters from happening, who wants to influence the next budget. Imagine being that guy and trying to source a meeting with the politician responsible. It's going to be a very difficult task. And even if you do get the meeting, they are going to listen to you blabber on, play Candy Crush on their cell phone, just like what some of our MPs do. And in the end, nothing will be done. That senior civil engineer will then be frustrated and will start looking for opportunities in the private sector. Time and time again, we see this rinse and repeat.
No, that's true.
We don't need maintenance. We need more Mandela statues.
Nice. Guys, I'm going to move us on. But I think this is a topic we'll keep an eye on, because this will not be the first nor the last, not that it is the first, collapse of infrastructure around us. The very things that hold this country together, support the very economy that we're dependent on, these politicians couldn't give a damn about. But nonetheless, I want to move us on to a politician who perhaps himself doesn't give a damn. I'm talking, of course, about the Russian president, Vladimir Putin, who, after suspending South Africa, letting them stew for a few weeks in this matter of will or will they not arrest him, he finally comes out this week and says, don't worry about it, South Africa. Chill, chief. I'm not going to rock up. You don't have to deal with the conundrum that is the question of arresting me as per the International Criminal Court's warrant of arrest for this chap. Let me quickly open this article. As I'm doing this, you see, it's back to regular programming. As I'm doing this, please hit that like button, please, and share the stream. There it is. The DA, of course, claiming a massive victory on this particular issue, because they have been quite aggressive in advocating for and really pushing the government to honor its Rome Statute requirements of arresting Putin if he is to land here in South Africa for the BRICS summit in a month. The DA here claiming victory after the government, of course, saying, okay, fine, it will arrest the chap if he gets here. The South African government has conceded that it failed to execute its international responsibilities by failing to issue a warrant of arrest, of Russian President Vladimir Putin if he enters the country. On Friday this week, the Gauteng High Court in Pretoria confirmed that the Justice Department had finally sent the Putin arrest warrant to the National Director for Public Prosecutions, a one absent Shamila Batohi, or Batohi, on Monday. This was more than 2 months after the International Relations and Cooperative Department sent its justice colleagues the warrant from the ICC. The ICC issued this warrant, of course, on the basis of Putin's responsibility for war crimes allegedly committed during Russia's invasion of the Ukraine. The DA went, of course, to court to compel the arrest of Putin if he lands in South Africa, as I mentioned, for the BRICS summit next year. End of quote. I'm going to go around the room once again, and then we'll open it up for an open mic session on this, because I think there is something to be said here, Dumo, about a Russian president who, let me be frank with you, dog, simply doesn't give a flying.
Agreed. He doesn't, and I think so do the other presidents as well. I mean, this just brings back the al-Bashir incident, right? I'm surprised no one has been arrested, and I don't know. Wait, maybe there has. I didn't follow that story that well. What happened after al-Bashir? Did anyone get prosecuted and everything like that? But that's what happens. The South African government will ensure that Putin does not get arrested. Now that I'm saying this, I'm not saying that I support Russia or support Ukraine. I'm a neutral in this issue. But in a situation like this, especially if you're in a alliance with Russia, you're not going to allow someone like Putin to get arrested. And I remember even with the al-Bashir incident, there were talks that I think Mugabe was still alive at that time, and he said that Zuma assured al-Bashir that he will not get arrested if he comes to South Africa, and it looked like he kept his promise. So I think also, I mean, the DA, saying it's a victory and whatever, I mean, it doesn't really make a difference. I mean, Putin goes to jail. Let's say Putin does come and he gets arrested. Oh, is the war in Russia? Is the war in Ukraine going to end? It's not, because Russia made it clear that if Ukraine joins NATO, there's going to be consequences because of the security threat. So who's going to succeed Putin, he's going to continue the war until Ukraine doesn't join, or they say they're not going to join NATO. Well, that's what they say. But the reality is that no one is going to allow this to happen, and now we got it. Yeah.
Not only are you correct, but I want to throw it to you, Koketso, because there's something absurd here about the DA in particular, and I'm going to go after them quite aggressively here because they've been idiotic on this issue, even as they're dancing in the rain on this, celebrating like a pig in slop. A lot of people were asking questions of the DA. Number one, your premier in the Western Cape at one stage had said, if this man lands here, or if he finds himself, if Vladimir Putin finds himself in the Western Cape for whatever reason, we've got our own officers, the LEAP officers is what he was referring to. We'll arrest him, they said. And instantly, it alienated folks, including their own base on the Cape Flats, who were saying, well, hang on, how are you so vociferous about the arrest of Putin when there is a gangster right down the road from me, 3 houses down, shooting up the block right now as we speak, and your LEAP officers, let alone SAPS, who in fairness to the DA, they don't control, but your LEAP officers are not, front and center on this issue. Again, I must add caveats. I'm not saying the LEAP officers are useless. They're doing a good job here and there. But people are saying, why fixate on Russia when there are more pressing issues for us here? There's something weird about this, Koketso.
Yeah, there's something very weird about it. And I think you've touched on something I actually wanted to bring up regarding this whole thing. There are elements or portions of society that have decided that their existence for living or activism or saying anything on anything should be always based around Russia, Ukraine, etc. And for me, I find that a little bit odd because we have bigger problems at home. I said this 2 years ago when this first started to come to light, that we have bigger problems at home. Firstly, someone needs to maybe check on the DA's premier there in the Western Cape. I don't know what it is. Take his phone away. I don't know. Maybe he needs a holiday, but you can't say these things, You honestly, it's not even about DA, but as a premier of a province, you can't go out of your way to start commenting on international affairs or extra provincial affairs that does not involve the people you have sworn to serve. I'll say the same thing when Lesotho was MEC for Education in Gauteng, waxing lyrical about Orania, which was 2 provinces away, while we had bigger issues directly in his docket, directly in his province. Same thing goes for Ellen Windy. So yeah, it's not just him, it's large elements of society that have decided to dedicate their precious time towards Russia and Ukraine, and are also now, like Dumo mentioned, really having a go at individuals, namely Vladimir Putin or even Volodymyr Zelensky in this case. It's completely off, and it does show that actually in their day-to-day jobs, a lot of our politicians may not actually be thinking about their constituencies. They have designs on something bigger as a means of climbing up their hierarchies in their respective organizations instead of doing the job that they collect a decent salary to do month in, month out.
Absolutely. And Mpiyakhe, I must throw it to you just with an extra bit of spice, because of course Vladimir Putin coming out now and saying, hey, listen, I'm not coming. I'll be there via video conference. And of course, he'll send his foreign minister, I can't remember his name now for the life of me.
No,
the point I was getting at, the ANC are now breathing a sigh of relief to a large extent because, and this is where it gets disgusting in a sense, and Dumo touched on it. The ANC are showing their colors. They are not a party of the rule of law. I mean, they'll pass laws to their heart's content in parliament, sitting there in those chairs as the fat cats that they are. But they're really not a party that believes in law and order, nor even the rule of law. Again, I'm not saying they should have arrested Putin, but here's the thing. If you sign up as a Rome signatory and you say you're going to do this thing, then by hell, you must do the damn thing.
Exactly. No, I absolutely agree with you, and I agree with Dumo as well. That if Putin steps into the country tomorrow, he must get arrested, just as they should have arrested al-Bashir. But saying that, I have been an opponent of South Africa's membership of the Rome Statute for a long time, long before this Ukraine war, long before 2014, when the war actually started. So I have been an opponent of South Africa's membership because I think it constrains our foreign policy too much. And this court has shown, the ICC has shown itself to be a biased court. Just think about, how many illegal wars that has America initiated. So America has been an aggressor in so many wars. I mean, all the wars America has been involved in since I mean, all the wars that America has been involved in since their civil war have been aggressive wars. They've never really fought a defensive war. So it's an interesting situation that like some countries seem to be immune from ICC prosecution, and I get the justification. People say, oh, but it doesn't, but just because America is given a pass here doesn't mean we must give everyone else a pass. But then how can you have, like, just imagine in South Africa, if South African courts only prosecuted crimes if the crimes were committed by DA members, but never any crimes committed by ANC members, would anyone be happy with that court? So why are we being hypocritical when it comes to the ICC? So that's my stance on the court. But yeah, I agree. Like when he steps into the country, we must arrest him as long as we're members of this court. In fact, I think it shows a weakness on the part of the government, the ANC-led government, that they can't seem to decide whether they want to be part of the statute or not, to be part of this court or not. Just make a decision and stick to it. If you want to be part of this court, then abide by the decisions of the ICC. If you don't want to be a part of it, then leave, and to stop toing and froing. Just make one decision and stick to it. Because last time they were stopped from leaving the ICC because they didn't because of a technicality. Because the court said the president can't leave unilaterally. You need to consult. Parliament actually has to make a decision to leave. The president can't just make the decision on his own, or the executive can't make the decision on their own. It needs to be a decision of Parliament, which makes sense because it was a treaty which was approved by Parliament, and it has constitutional implications as well. So Parliament must make the decision to leave. So that was the technicality. That's an easily solvable technicality. You just make sure it goes through Parliament, and Parliament votes on to leave the court, to leave their Rome statute. Something that can be done tomorrow, but they don't want to do it. So because it's just a weak government, and this government just shows itself every day to be a weak government. They can never make any firm decision on anything. It's always like their default state is just to wait and see. They always want to wait and see where the wind blows and go there.
Like a fish, never actually going forward and taking a firm decision on something. Jimmy, I must throw it to you before we have an open mic session on this, because I must throw in my realities. Of course, we're saying as a matter of the rule of law, and something the ANC themselves have said they're going to agree to, they should arrest Putin. But of course, there's also the politics around this. You touch Putin, and you'll have the entire Russian army bearing down on you. Of course, South Africa had that also imperative in the back of its mind, aside from Russia being an actual partner under the BRICS arrangement too. I get it, right? And I think we all get it on the panel. But there's something I wanted to throw to you. There's a conversation to be had here, Jimmy, about perhaps two things. And I know you like African politics in particular. Maybe the rest of the African continent looks at the situation, looks at South Africa, looks at the invites that South Africa has put out for this upcoming BRICS summit, and says, you know what? South Africa seems to be the favored child under this potential new world order of BRICS, because there's broader things here. I'm going to bring into more with monetary policy in a moment. But there's a broader conversation here around BRICS as an institution, and people saying, or African countries saying, maybe South Africa is our in to this new, perhaps global new world order. Sorry to use this expression. I know the conspiracy theorists will enjoy it in the comment section, but I mean it in the sense of BRICS as a new bloc.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we saw Macron from France alluding to the fact that there's a shift of power that's happening globally. We all see it; it's imminent. And but before I touch on that, I just want to also reiterate that Putin coming to South Africa, if Putin were to come to South Africa, I wouldn't be comfortable with him being arrested. Purely because, number one, we have our Mabena in our military, and number two, I mean, like, I'm just consolidating what everyone has said here, right? The first issue is our own ability to defend ourselves from Russia should they decide to respond to us arresting Putin. But also, secondly, the issue of of hypocrisy. I mean, like we have in some instances a war criminal telling us to arrest another war criminal, and like you know what I mean. So I think I'm quite comfortable, to be quite honest, with South Africa's stance on the Ukraine-Russia, in a sense that I don't pick sides. Like I'm not gonna say Team Ukraine or Team Russia. But at the same time, I'm not gonna say what Russia is doing in Ukraine is acceptable, because it's not. It's war. There's no such thing as a good war. However, the stance that there should be a push for negotiation, that is something that I support. Someone's going to lose. Someone's going to lose. The same way that during 1994, Black people lost something. They had to make some concessions. I mean, they had to make some sort of like agreements, come to agreements. Like, for example, because they had a long list of nationalization, they had to say, okay, fine, let's not nationalize. They had to forget about some of the historic injustices that happened in terms of land and so on and so forth, and said, okay, fine, let's find the middle ground. So someone lost here and someone gained there. You know what I mean? So that's what we need with Russia. If Ukraine needs to lose some of its land, or maybe they need to work around something there in order for them to find peace, then maybe that's the most logical way forward. I mean, like, there's no point for them to keep fighting and finish each other off. So that's my stance on that. It's my stance is that we need to push negotiation. And also, just to add in terms of BRICS, just to finish off in terms of BRICS, yes, I think that there is a shift, and it's a necessary shift. I mean, like, some of us, some of our currencies are pegged to the dollar. I'm sure Dumo will know a lot more than I on this matter, but we are pegged on the dollar. Basically, they own us as Africa, in terms of the one side really owns us, and they can dictate our survival, can dictate. Can tomorrow decide, you know what, we're putting you on sanctions, and those sanctions can have like a real impact on the livelihoods of people who have nothing to do with any war or any political stance, so on and so forth. So we need that balance, because right now it's too shifted to the West. We need something that sort of like balances us between the West.
I will agree. And I want to throw to just this open panel now. Two things, because I'm keeping an eye on time, and we have one more topic that I must get through. On BRICS as an institution, actually before that, I think it's weird that you say anything on social media now, either on Russia, either on Ukraine, and one or the other camp will chew on you as if you are Russian yourself, or you're Ukrainian and you're involved in the war. I find that very weird, and it's very hard to just provide content analysis when there's just so many people who are invested in this issue that is so far from us. Anyway, I'm waffling. The point is this. I take no sides in this issue, but I listen to Putin speak, and I go, this guy is saying exactly what any American president in history's past has said around territorial integrity and the nature of what is perceived to be aggression against their country. Let me be precise and specific. During the Cold War, when the Russians were cozying up with Cuba, to the point where at some stage they said, hey, how about we have a Russian outpost, a potential thought that there could be the placing of Russian nuclear weapons in Cuba, the Americans went berserk, and you then obviously saw a whole bunch of things happen, the Bay of Pigs and all sorts of things, as America positioned itself as saying, don't do that. Don't place these weapons close to us. For me, I look at what's happening in Russia now as the same rationale. Now, again, I must say this because I know the comment section is going to go crazy. Oh, CK is a Russian paid spy. He's going to have coffee with Putin next month. Hey, guys, I've been called everything from a US spy to a Russian shill. I don't care. For me, it's the same rationale. What is the thoughts of the panel on that, number one? Number two, as I forget it, Dumo. There's something to be said about what BRICS is suggesting here. I've been playing videos all week by Dr. Peter Onge. He's an economist, an Austrian economist on Twitter. not on Twitter. He's also an Austrian economist everywhere else. I'm going to look to have him on the show because he makes very important points around a potential change in the global monetary system if BRICS goes ahead and forms a gold-backed currency to compete against the dollar. Guys, those two areas, can we chew on that? Dumo, hit it.
Okay. All right. Okay, the first thing, right? Going back to the Cuban Missile Crisis, just as a little information that I'd like to add there is that Cuba is further away from Florida than the Ukrainian border is from Moscow. So that also adds more to the whole Russia-Ukraine conflict, that if people are going to say that Russia is wrong for doing what they did, then they have to condemn the USA for what they did with the Bay of Pigs. And also, we don't like it if our enemies are like right next door to us, having missiles and they're going to shoot us. I don't think any of us like that at all. And then, and another thing, and this is another libertarian red poll here, is that think about it. As I said before, no one likes wars, right? So, but who are the ones that start the wars? It's nations that have a monopoly on ultimate decision making, and then once they oppress their own people, then it's like now we need to expand. So, how do you solve that? Well, every country must be a private law society. You remove the privileges that public officials get in public law. And if everyone's judged by the same law within private law, then you won't have those issues anymore. And that's the reason why we have this conflict. So, America, Russia, everything, they're all guilty of war crimes, right? But if we don't have these big states, then we won't have this problem. That's another one. And then now let's talk about the gold-backed currency with BRICS. Look, if this comes into play, it's going to be very interesting because now gold is rare. It is rare, and if you looked at currencies that were once backed in gold, you only saw a rising in the price of goods and services when new gold was discovered. Because according to the Austrian definition of inflation is when the supply of money increases. It's not the price of goods and services going up. That's a consequence of the increase of money supply. And I know the MMT guys are going to go crazy and say that's wrong, but they believe in magic money theory. No one takes them seriously. Right.
Shout out to Buddy Wells.
So I think if this goes through, right, I think people are going to be asking, hey, you know what? I mean, if this currency is backed in gold, that means it'll hold its value for longer. The purchasing power of it will be great. And against the dollar's not backed in gold anymore. They moved off the gold standard quite a while back, and you saw how inflation has shot up as a result. So people are going to be thinking, you know what? Perhaps we should invest more in this currency. That could be the case, but again, I only know it from a headline perspective. There might be caveats involved that I'm not aware of, but just on a surface level, that's how it looks like to me.
Yeah, I just wanted to make I just wanted to add to the point on money, because as far as I'm aware, that the gold-backed currency from BRICS, it was something that came out of the Russian embassy in Kenya. So it was just something that diplomats from there mentioned. But there isn't something firm. Like South African diplomats apparently earlier this week said there wasn't anything to it as yet. Because if you want to do something like that, you have to be very careful, considering the history of the countries invaded by America for doing exactly this. Look at what happened to Gaddafi. He had this idea of this gold-backed dinar that was going to become the African currency, and then he was taken out. Okay, coincidence? Okay, I don't know. You tell me. But so there's a bad history of that happening. But I think the dollar is destined to collapse on its own. I mean, we've never had an experiment like this, and I keep saying this, we've never had an experiment like this where the entire world is basically on a fiat system of money. Like the entire world is on an unbacked currency system. This I can't believe this will end well, and this has gone on now for more than 50 years. So I think we are overdue for something like happening there, because already, like, I think 2008 was a warning that this system is maybe not sustainable. And then I just think, like, we're actually living on borrowed time. So it's one of those things that everyone should be aware of. Like, people, like, just everyone who has anything to do with money. And I think the people in the best position are probably young people who are either still in school or are just starting to work, because they have time to deal with whatever system comes in. For everyone else, like, people like us who are maybe in the middle of their careers and things like that, we need to be aware of the things that might happen, and start preparing for them, and start making some radical changes. So on the money system, I think, and it's the basis of America's power too, because they actually levy a tax on all of us, for because what happens is, if you want to trade with anyone, even if you want to trade with another African country, let's say we want to trade with Mozambique. To buy copper from Mozambique, we actually have to take our rands, buy dollars, and then give them the dollars, and then get the copper. It makes no sense. And then America, because as the issuer of the dollar, they effectively levy a tax. It's called seigniorage, because by us losing their currency. So they actually levy a tax, and it's what's responsible actually for the high standards of living in America, even as freedom deteriorates in the USA. So it's what keeps them up on top as the biggest economy in the world, even though they've actually let go of some of the most important values they were founded on as the USA. So it's something that needs to change eventually, because it's a burden on emerging markets, because you've seen what happens. It's usually like, if you've noticed, America and emerging market economies never do well at the same time. It's either America or emerging market economies do well. Like it's either or. It's never both at the same time. It's usually because, like, America, because of the dollar. The dollar is actually oppressive, because everyone has to buy the dollar, and everyone has to use the dollar to sell their goods. Which I could talk on for a long time about this, but it's actually something that needs to change, and it's something that's it's something that's overdue now.
Maybe I can
Guys?
attempt to simplify this a little bit.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so quite recently, a friend of mine actually asked me to really explain this Russia-Ukraine thing in the simplest term possible. I tried my best. Maybe I'll try again now. So, yeah, look, not to sound impragmatic here, but I've got over 2 decades of playing real-time strategy games, mostly against computer AI. If you so much as move a unit within vision of your enemy, they will respond. With Russia and Ukraine, on the other hand, this is now more realistic. If the guy who's clearly told you he doesn't like you starts visiting your neighbor more and more often at early hours of the morning in broad daylight, of course it's going to prod a response from you. In fact, arguably, if you do nothing, then as a leader, some could even argue that you are a weak leader because you're allowing this to happen. And of course, at the same time, it's not fair that Ukrainian fitness models who were enjoying a life of winning beauty pageants left, right, center, now have to have their lives turned upside down and potentially lose the lives of loved ones over something which has absolutely nothing to do with them. So it really comes down to one versus the other, as most people see it. But at the end of the day, both sides are wrong, and it would be foolish to pick one over the other because of some other preference or some other philosophical preference or some other situation where, as we know, Russia is, let me say, very supportive of cadres and their eating.
Guys, if nobody else wants to jump in here, let me tie us up, because we're in the last 30 minutes of the show. Good evening. Welcome to A Joking Atheist, doing exactly what he does well there, coming with the jokes. Shout out to you, Joking Atheist. And shout out to Unobi, who, of course, dropped a super chat earlier on. I just didn't acknowledge that, and I just saw her say good night now. Thank you so much for the support, Unobi. Remember, if you want to support the channel, if you're watching on YouTube, drop a super chat, guys. It definitely helps throw a few shekels in the I don't know. I don't know how to finish that sentence, but I know how to finish this one. You're watching Liberty and Friends. We're in the last 30 minutes of the show. Tonight, we're joined by the two fellas from the Manpatria podcast, Dumo, Denga, and of course, Koketso, Resane. Jimmy Ramakgopa is also in the house. Been a while since we've seen Upra Jimmy. Hopefully, we'll see more of him this year. With that being said, also another face we haven't seen in a while is Mpiyakhe Dhlamini. That's coming to us from a Newcastle. that lovely and very cold part of KZN right now. Shout out to the panel and good evening. Welcome to it. Hit that like button. This is Liberty and Friends. Guys, I must move us on perhaps to the final topic for the evening. If we have time near the end, I'll throw in one more, but I really want to have this chat. As I lose my notes, bear with me, please. Oh my, I've just totally lost my notes here. But it involves, of course, the breakdown of law and order in this country. I'm going to try and link two stories because I want to squeeze in a couple of stories here. The SAPS forensic building in Silverton here in Gauteng on Sunday last week saw 12 armed men barge into it, attempting effectively, as the allegations go, to steal drugs that are kept. These are confiscated drugs, of course, that are kept in this facility. You can imagine shots were fired, a police officer was injured, and these 12 men who, after failing to blow up and blow their way in to a vault where these drugs are kept, then fled the scene, effectively leaving, as I said, one cop injured and others tied up in this incident. Guys, there's a massive problem in this country when you literally have what should be one of the most secure facilities under SAPS watch being raided seemingly so easily by these individuals. The other story I want to link in here, it's a bit of a cheeky one, but it also touches on drugs and perceivably the failure of SAPS, seeing another industry bloom of this TV character. I want to put him on screen here. This is a bit uncharacteristic of me, but I found it very interesting stumbling on it because I have seen clips. I don't watch the show, but I've seen clips of this occasionally. You'll know, of course, this chap, Uxolani Khumalo, who's the host of a show called Sizokuthola, which is Zulu for Will Get You. Very ominous name to a show there. There he is, pictured over there. The headline, Moja Love, that's the studio that owns the show, investigating the death of an alleged drug dealer while filming Sizokuthola. Now, very briefly, the show basically involves this gentleman, Ukhumalo, with a armed posse and also with SAPS in tow, raiding the homes of suspected drug dealers across the country. And of course, filming this almost in a cheetah-style, format, reality TV type format. Very popular show. You'll often see cuts of the show floating around on social media. However, a man has died in the custody, or at least whilst they were filming in their home. The suspected drug dealer, one Robert Very, died following the crew's visit to a house in Katlehong on Wednesday. Now, it's quoted, as having said here, according to Moja Love, while the crew can confirm that it was within the vicinity of the premises when the deceased was being questioned, the channel is still investigating the circumstances that led to the deceased having to be allegedly rushed to hospital. That's, of course, according to the studio that owns the show, Moja Love. They continue to say the channel said the crew was with law enforcement officials during the raid, and everything done on the day was within the confines of the law. End of quote. Let me come back to the panel. Guys, I'm sort of linking these two stories on purpose because both speak to the scourge, of course, of substance abuse in the country, the peddling and pushing of drugs, and even when the drugs are confiscated by SAPS, a criminal elite in this country who's brazen enough to even break into SAPS forensic vaults for this. Dumo, what's going on here? Is SAPS losing the war on drugs? And should there even be a war on drugs?
Yeah, those are two good questions. And I think let's answer the first one. Are they losing the war on drugs? Yes, they are. Because when they confiscate drugs, what happens? There's someone that says, hey, man, I know a guy. Well, they'll say, I know in this police station, they keep drugs in this vault. We can take it, blow it up, take our stuff, and then sell it. So clearly there's a market for it as well. Now, I think when it comes to the war on drugs, I think it should be it should be dealt with a bit differently. I don't think, because I think what the libertarian would say is that, is it fair to throw someone who smokes a substance in jail? Is it fair to throw someone who sells a substance to another person in jail when there are criminals who actually aggress against other people? They'll say that a drug transaction is a peaceful transaction. Now, that's not to say that there is no problem with drugs. Yes, there are drugs that do change your mind, they change your behavior, and they become, and when you smoke a lot of it or take a lot of it, it becomes problematic, just like alcohol and other substances as well. So that is true. That does happen. So how do you deal with that? That's another. That's for another episode. But I think SAPS has put themselves in a very tough position when they say that we're going to arrest people that consume and sell drugs, and that puts them in another war that they should not be in, and the resources that they could be using to fight like the real criminals, like the aggressors, the guys that do armed robbery and stuff like that. All those resources are now going to be put on something for peaceful transactions. As they would say, taking drugs is a victimless crime, and that's the problem now. And already they are stretched thin. I remember the old police commissioner, I forgot his name, who said the following. He said, the SAPS has been seen as an all-purposes agency, and we do not have enough resources to fulfill our mandate. So now if that is the case, then SAPS has to be, they have to be very careful on which wars they're going to fight. And I think with the drug one, maybe they can fight it, but they're losing. And the libertarians have a solution on that one. It's quite a controversial one, but if you think about it, it does work. And I think for me, if you allow communities to, let me put it this way. If you have a private law society where you have communities that decide what comes in and goes out and you privatize everything, it'll be better. But then the problem is that if you allow the police to decide that or the state to do that, you're going to have these situations. And you see it in America with the war on drugs, what has happened. And you could say they're winning that, but in South Africa, they're losing. And imagine if they're winning that, they would cause even more damage as well. So yeah, that's where I'll put it.
Koketso, I must throw it to you because, and I purposefully went down this line because I know, we classical liberals, libertarians often don't win any awards on this particular issue. But actually, there is a conversation to be had here around resource allocation, number one, and a very same SAPS who themselves, via the previous police commissioner, saying, hey man, we're struggling. We're barely staying afloat in the most basic of our mandate of just visible policing. We're failing at that. These other specialized areas, such as drug enforcement and the like, after the initial disbandment of these specialized units and then bringing them back, but then when they brought them back, they were not the same as before, they were watered down. SAPS is simply losing its stated goal of going after these drug lords. Drug lords are literally operating out in the open. Maybe a change in tact is needed.
I feel like you read my mind there. Yeah, look. Yeah, there's several things to put out here. The first one is that I think that gang of 12 were probably on drugs themselves. I've been to that forensic lab several times. Those who know my career path will know why. And I can tell you now, there's many good men and women who work in that building, and no gang of 12 were going to make it in there and out of there with loot, with evidence, if I can put it like that, particularly drug evidence that has to be carried out. That was never going to happen. So I think they were on drugs regarding that. And again, shout out to the defenders of that facility, which has stood the test of time. It actually goes back to pre-1994 as well. So it's not a new building. It's been there for quite a while, and it's been the forensic lab of the South African police for quite a while as well. But you're right in that this is really a consequence of what we see with budget cuts to the budget for policing. As more and more police, as we see more and more of the force being undermined in terms of budget, criminals will become a little bit braver. And at the same time, the police who are currently there, who are tasked with actually offering a level of protection, they'll become effectively despondent, because when you're under-resourced at your place of work, you typically want a way out. It creates a level of frustration that I'm sure industrial psychologists will know the term better than I do. But it does create a level of frustration. It takes away from the passion that some of the men and women in blue uniform might already have. And like I've mentioned, it does actually empower the criminal elements to actually be a little bit braver and start attacking national key point areas such as the entire forensic lab headquarters in Pretoria. You wouldn't see such an attack happening if SAPS were sufficiently resourced, because it would be too high of a risk. But clearly this gang that was on drugs themselves saw it fit enough to take the risk. Although it was a spectacular failure, there is something to be said that they went ahead and executed regardless. Now, say what you will about bank robbers, but they do what they do because they do believe there's a prospect for reasonable success. So we're actually seeing that, and this will go unnoticed because why? Our media is focusing their attentions elsewhere. You don't hear much about the consequences of reducing the budget to the police in the middle of a growing population and growing unemployment, which any study or any academic will even tell you that with rising unemployment comes a rise in crime rate because people still want a means to get an income, even if that income is obtained illicitly. So it's really a complication of sorts and a compound of several issues here, but it does go back down to the state really not allocating resources in the right manner, of which protection, and this is why I'm not a libertarian, but for me, I want small government, but one of the key competencies of any government, big or small, should be to protect its citizenry. That is, secure your border, have a standing army and a navy, and of course be able to effect visible, good, effective policing. Cutting the budget in the middle of a growing population, that's worse than actually standing still. It's actually going back intentionally against what you should be doing in the first place. I'll leave it at that.
And of course, Jimmy, I would agree with Koketso on that particular point. I'm also a bit of a, the one legitimate area of the state is, protecting citizens from foreign aggression, the idea of having an army, a diplomatic corps, and of course, domestic threats, police force and the administration of justice. But that's not what I want to unpack here tonight. I want to come to a particular point. On the issue of budgets, do you know the one area, Jimmy, where politicians never skimp, and they never skimp is on themselves? If you look at the police budget, the largest stake of it goes towards VIP protection, not drug enforcement specialized units, more detectives who are well-resourced, not more visible policing, not more border control, you name it. All the key areas that are needed to secure the republic. No, forget that. Our protection as politicians, the bodyguards who then beats up citizens on the side of the N1. There's something fundamentally problematic about that, Jimmy, and it speaks to the problems of why perhaps criminals then look at the rest of the police force's open gates, as we used to play in primary school.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think another aspect that's really lacking in South Africa law enforcement ecosystem is intelligence. A well-equipped country should have known that there are people planning to attack a key national point of some sort. That should have been known. It's not something that should be that a competent government should find out on the day. And it goes back to a lot of things. Like when you look at the sabotage that's happening with the tax. All these criminal networks, these are syndicates. These are not like people just deciding, today, okay, some of it occasionally, yes, but to a large extent, a lot of the issues that we're facing right now in the country are due to syndicates. And the fact that we are unable to track, monitor, preempt, and sort of like be on the offense to such syndicates shows a lack of intelligence within our police system. And I think that's one thing that needs to be revitalized, that needs to be fixed, so that we can identify these organized criminals in drug cartels and so on and so forth, so we can identify them early and strategically attack them. And then just going back to Dumo's point, yes, we're not gonna eradicate drugs entirely. And to a large extent, I agree with Dumo that there should be I agree with Dumo partially in a sense that I'm a believer that recreational drugs should sort of like be sort of like in the market and allowed for people to trade. However, there are some drugs like heroin, aka nyaupe, which are just disruptive when they destroy economies. I'm not going to even talk about families. They destroy economies because they destroy people. Those people, the prospects of those people actually becoming educated, becoming useful, diminishes, and then it also contributes directly to crime because there's a difference between your recreational drugs and your more severe drugs like your heroin. So that's where we need intelligence to come in, and that's where we need a stronger police force to actually tackle those types of issues that we are facing right now as a country. And of course, I agree, it goes back to allocation, and if we allocate it properly, then we'll be able to have a more targeted and more strategic approach when dealing with crime in South Africa.
Mpiyakhe, as the final sort of comment before it becomes open mic, I'm always frightened when we have the conversation on drugs. I'm conflicted myself, but I understand the rationale, and I think it is correct that you can't expect South African police services to chase after every single drug addict in the country. It's an impossible task in and of itself. That's why when I hear people say, "Oh, we must double down on the war on drugs," I go, "Hi, maybe you don't live in the townships I live in. Maybe you don't have a farm like I do in a rural part of the country where I'm seeing just how impossible this task is. Especially when, as in my case, maybe I'm writing myself out here. But in the off season on my fields, weed grows just as a weed. Excuse the fragment error there. And again, I'm not saying it's smoking grade weed, and we all obviously burn it. We burn it, people. And no, we don't burn it to smoke it. I'm sorry, I'm hearing myself. I heard the moment I said it.
I was like, yeah, we burn it and inhale the fume.
But we do clear it. The point I'm getting at, it would be impossible to expect South African police service or even any agency in the world to go after these people. What I've always advocated for is rather allocate that money into drug treatment services, which are sorely lacking in this country, because you'll have some chap arrested, maybe with islob, I don't know what that is in English, of weed. And, instead of being helped, he's treated like a hardened criminal, which he's not. Some of these people who are addicts in particular are just sick. They're sick people and they need help. So where are we getting this thing wrong? And after Mpiyakhe's point, guys, just chime in if you want to raise an issue on this point.
Okay. No, I think I'm on Dumo's side with this. Well, I generally agree with him on his idea of a private law society. So I agree with Dumo on most things. So yeah, I'm on Dumo's when it comes to this, because we really there's no it's not even that we have to chase every addict. Like even just going after the distributors, going after the dealers, is impossible for this government. Let's be honest. And what Koketso's point about the reduction in budgets, well, there's a good reason for that. It's because this government is too focused on welfare and on paying the administrative the people who administrate the welfare states. So like things like hospitals, public hospitals, which don't function well. Because if you go to a public hospital now, the one thing like the not one thing that the nurses union will tell you, they'll tell you that okay, we don't have enough staff here at this public hospital. But the strange thing is, like the bulk of the budget goes to public health and it goes to public education. So how come there isn't, like, how come the teachers union and the NSS union, they always tell you there isn't enough staff here, but then like all of this money goes there, and those are the two places where they always get above inflation increases, but somehow the money doesn't make a difference. So maybe someone ought to start thinking maybe the problem here isn't the fact that isn't the resource issue. We've thrown all the resources we can at this issue, like public health and education. Maybe it's just having this system. Maybe we should rather allocate the money to the learners and have some sort of voucher system, which is something I know Sikle have discussed before. So things like that, like, it's just an entire resource issue, like looking at the entirety of the resources that the state has and allocating them rationally. Because now we are sacrificing everything else, at the expense, like for welfare, and it's not sustainable at all. And we're now adding new welfare programs. We're now adding a new cash grant in the form of the unemployment grant. So it's getting worse and worse, and we're not discussing the UBI, whether we should have a universal basic income in South Africa, or a basic income grant. So like things like that will only make things worse, because we are not a rich country, and we can't afford to print ourselves into, like, we can't afford to print infinite amounts of cash like the Americans can, because everyone funds America, so they can print as much as they want. We can't do that as South Africa. We have to actually have a budget. So we have to think about all of those things. And when it comes to drugs, no one, well, I just don't see the issue as like, for me, I've always been a big advocate of personal responsibility. For me, in adults, like, I only worry about the children, because children should not, like, I'm a complete authoritarian when it comes to children. Children should not touch drugs at all. I don't care whose child you are. If I see you touching drugs, I'm gonna clap you. Because children should not be involved in drugs at all, for whatever reason. Even if their parents give them permission, I don't care. Children should not take drugs. But for adults, they should be allowed to take drugs as much as they want. And as long as, and also the other side of that is sometimes we miss this, because sometimes we think it's our problem, because we see that, okay, no, this person they go to public hospitals, and we have to pay for them to get treated when they go to public hospitals. Who says we have to do that? We don't have to treat these people. It's like we can even say, okay, if we don't want to get rid of the public hospitals, we can say, if you have a history of taking drugs, we exclude you from using public health care. It can be as simple as that. So the responsibility is all on you. It's all on the individual. And you may say that maybe I lack sympathy for adults who fall into hard times. Maybe that may be the case. But I think if you make those decisions, you must own it. You must own the decision and say, okay, if I've taken this decision, I've messed up my life, then I must take whatever comes with that. If it means I end up staying on the streets, then I must own whatever comes with that. And then, like, if private people, like the churches, charitable organizations, NGOs, and things like that, if they want to help me, they can help me. But it doesn't have to be the society's problem in the form of the state or taxation. So that's where I'm at with this. And when it comes, like, so many of our problems, like this, our police don't need to be dealing with drug crimes. Like, it shouldn't be an issue for us. And one of the issues is also a geopolitical issue, because you have the single convention on narcotic drugs from the United Nations, which sort of pushes countries to fight a drug war. And it all goes back to America's influence in global affairs, because the Americans, once they had made a domestic determination that they wanted to have a drug war in their own country, what they did is they went out into these international institutions like the UN, and they introduced these treaties to force everyone else to have a drug war, so that they can try and shut out supply from coming into the USA from all of these other countries. So that's, like, so all of these issues are sort of connected. So we need to deal with these things in a holistic manner. And it's a big problem, but the starting point for us should be, we don't have to enforce these laws. We don't have to be dealing with this issue. It's not our problem. It's not, as a state, it's not our problem as a state. As individuals, as people who have family members, who have friends, yes, it is our problem, and we can help our friends, we can help our family members, we can help our church members, people in our communities as private individuals, but it doesn't have to be a state's, the government's problem.
Yeah, absolutely. And I must say this, guys, very briefly, we're very short on time, and I did say I'll be very strict. So I'm going to give this 5 minutes. So if everybody can be just brief, please, I'll appreciate it. Dumo.
Okay. All right. Okay. There was a comment there that said drugs kill, Dumo, like not like a bullet, but they still kill. So does diabetes. It doesn't mean that now we must have a drug, we must have a war on sugar, and then we go and we arrest everyone that drinks Coke and everything like that and throw them in jail. Of course not. And also, going back to Mpiyakhe's point about personal and that's the whole point. If we had to follow that, if we say something is harmful and therefore we need to regulate it and use the police to enforce it, then we're going to have to ban sugar. We're going to have to ban sugar. And not even, some even say carbohydrates. So you may not even like to even eat bread. Every bottle will have to be forced to be on a carnivore diet, which is crazy. You don't want that. That's going to be hell. And then going back to Mpiyakhe's point about personal responsibility. Guys, we have our own bodies as libertarians. We say that we own our own body, so therefore we can put into it whatever we wish, and therefore the person who drinks that Coke, takes that shot or whatever, they are responsible for their actions. And yeah, some people may say, oh, we're being heartless and everything, but it's their body. They are the ones that are going to have to pay the price for it, not you. But you as an individual, you can say, listen, kids, drugs are bad, okay? Don't take them. And if you got children that you're taking care of, yes, raise them properly, raise them so they can make the right decisions. But let's not go out there and try to make life harder for other people and stuff like that. Yeah. And also, again, it goes back to resource allocations as well. Why are you going to throw someone in jail who purchased a substance from another person when there are people committing aggression? It doesn't make sense. That's all I have to say.
Yeah. So can I just jump in? Dumo, hey, I think, guys, we need to create a distinction between recreational drugs and extreme drugs, because there's nuance there. With recreational drugs, maybe cocaine or weed or whatever, sure. But then when we talk about now, heroin, for example, that I made reference to, I think some can be commercialized. I don't mind if they start selling cocaine and weed and things like that. But then others, they have a serious impact. Look at the townships and look at how the amounts of young people who are just lingering in the streets. It's like you're in a zombie movie setting, and they've destroyed. This is a generational destruction. They've destroyed people from this generation and probably to the next generation. This contributes to crime. So it's not an isolated problem. It affects me because now when I wake up, I find that my gate is gone because the Nyaope boys have taken it. But that's just a small example. But then it affects me indirectly. And there's a difference between those hardcore drugs and the recreational ones. And with the recreational ones, I agree with you 100%. Your body, your choice. But then with the hardcore ones, because they affect me, they will eventually affect me, either by a crime or other means. I think those I also agree with Sisle. We don't necessarily have to arrest people. We need to treat them. So we need to allocate a budget to treatment. But for the criminal networks behind them, we need to allocate a budget that actually targets them, because those things are actually disruptive to the country.
Okay, just one small point, Jimmy, on the crime. Why are they committing the crime? They're committing the crime because they don't have jobs. They are functional drug addicts in the world. The reason why you will find that these guys will steal your gate and then sell it for $20 to get nyaupe. A lot of them, they can't function at work, and I understand that. And there are drugs that are bad, but at the same time, must we throw that guy in jail? Must that guy be thrown in jail now? You know what I'm saying? And do we make that drug? Yeah, we must treat him. But now, do we also have to make that drug illegal now?
Yes.
So it's illegal. Okay, so now you're gonna take someone who sells nyaupe to someone else, right, and throw him in jail. What aggression is he committed?
Look,
it's a consent. It's almost like saying that when two people decide to have sex and they're not married, and because now they might bring children into society and everything like that, and it could be a broken family. Now those guys must be thrown in jail now. That's the whole point I'm trying to show you.
It's like a war against the nation, bro. It's like, for example.
But that's what I'm saying, Julie. There's no aggression being committed. There's no aggression. If there's no aggression, it's not aggression.
Let me be the voice of reason.
Koketso, I'll bring you in, Koketso. Sorry, I should say, guys, we're really in the last 2 minutes. So, Koketso, you're the last voice on this one, and we must wrap up.
Thank you. To my two warring gentlemen here, I'm going to now take a dictatorial stance now. No self-respecting government is going to allow able-bodied adult citizenry to wither away in drug addiction when they could be productive members of society, or at the very least contribute to the defense of the nation by joining a standing military. It is counterproductive to have working population individuals rotting away under drug addiction because they have the freedom or liberty to do that. This is also why a declining population is not in the interest of any nation on earth. And you now have nations in Europe that are incentivizing effectively for people to start having sex and for women to start getting pregnant. That's the word right there. No argument needed.
I'm seeing a comment, but the private chat is going crazy here. Guys, Mpiyakhe, I'll let you chime in. Dumo, I'll let you chime in. But guys, 10 seconds each. I must wrap it up.
I was just saying that, we can't assume that the government owns us. Like, Koketso is saying, okay, what the government's needs are, what the nation's needs are. What about the needs of me as an individual? Surely the government must serve me. I'm the one who pays taxes. I pay for them to offer me services. I'm not there to serve them, to protect them, to defend them, to be productive for them, so that they can extract as much taxes as they can from me.
Okay, the government doesn't own our bodies, so who are they to say that we should be productive or not? That's up to the individual. And then lastly, if I could take a substance and someone sells it to me and I want to take it, that's not aggression. Aggression is when I initiate force against someone, and that's what I'm saying. I just don't think that it's fair to throw someone in jail for taking a substance that he says that he wants to take. That's it.
No.
Okay, guys, I must wrap it up. I must close it. I think I'm muted. Sorry about that. I was just saying I must close it, guys, only because I don't think my battery will last. But this is a topic I think we'll pick up again. It's important. It's absolutely important. So we'll definitely pick it up. As is tradition, I'm going to go around the house again just to let people know how they can be reached and what to expect from you this week, whether you're a writer, what pieces you're working on, or just what are you tweeting about at the moment. Dumo, Manpatria show, when is the show and what can people expect?
We haven't recorded a show in a while. There is new content that I'm working on. So please be patient, guys. It's a lot of work. So please be patient on that bit. But if you want to communicate with me, I'm on Twitter at Dumo Denga.
So,
yeah, I'm on Twitter as Koketso Resane, and like Dumo mentioned, we haven't recorded a show in a while. Life gets busy. I can't even afford to have a pet right now because of time.
oh, bruh. I feel you. Mpiyakhe, how do the folks reach you on your socials?
Yeah, I know it's become complicated to reach me on social media. But yeah, I do write for Daily Friend, which is an IRR aligned publication. So I do write for them once a month. I also write for the FMF once a month, which publishes in various platforms. So that's about it.
Absolutely. You can find Mpiyakhe's writing, as he mentioned, on the Daily Friend. That's dailyfriend.co.za. Of course, Jimmy, Brazo, how do the folks find you on social media if you want to be found? And what are you tweeting about, thinking about, writing about lately?
Now it's at Jimmy Ramakgopa on all socials except Facebook, and mostly tweeting about tech nowadays due to a project that I'm working on.
Nice. Love the sound of that. With that being said, fellas, thank you so much. As I get the fellas off screen, I thank you, dear viewer, for sticking with us throughout the entire 90 minutes of the show. You'll forgive me. It's usually 90 minutes plus, but we couldn't go beyond 90 minutes because of load shedding, unfortunately, on backup power. That being said, thank you so much for watching. A reminder to you on the way out, do me a favor, guys, just hit that like button. I know it's schlep, I always ask, but hit that like button. It helps grow our engagement. And of course, if you're watching on YouTube, subscribe to the channel, hit that bell notification so that you're notified when Liberty and Friends is on. I know I haven't been producing a lot of content lately. We'll be back soon, folks. At the moment, we're just doing Wednesdays and Fridays. Wednesdays, BDL show. Wednesdays and Sundays. Wednesday is the BDL show, and Friday is, of course, and Sunday is Liberty and Friends. I keep mentioning Friday because I will be releasing the usual weekly Mumish or Champ of the week. So look out for that on my channel. With that being said, thank you so much for watching the show. Please visit me on my website, please, at bigdaddyliberty.com. There'll be interesting stuff on here once we launch our foundation and we start hitting the ground across the country. I'm giving away what we're going to be doing here, but more information on that in the coming weeks. Guys, as I always say at the end of a show, never trust a commie.